Welcome back to Calimero YouTube channel. My name is Fran and I will be showing you everything you need to know about Calimero network, peer-to-peer systems and privacy applications. We continue with the ecosystem overview and today's topic is Merobox. Merobox is Python CLI tool which is used for running local networks, meaning you can run multiple nodes and you can also run and test workflows. Workflows are files where we define everything we need for running a peer-to-peer network, meaning we decide how many nodes are we running, we decide which application we are going to test with it, and this is to help us test application logic without the actual frontend. So first thing we are going to do is we are going to clone the repository because we are going to go through the workflow examples that we have in our Merobox repository. Merobox tool can be installed with multiple tools. You can install it with pip3 or you can use brew to install it on your machine. After it's downloaded, we're going to change directory to Merobox and we're going to install with pip3 the Merobox tool. After we finish the installation, we can check which Merobox to see which one it was installed, and we can also do Merobox version to see the version of the installed tool. Now I'm going to delete Merobox using pip3 and I'm going to use another way to install it, which is brew. And when it's finished installed, we can do it with Merobox again and we see that we have a homebrew Merobox. And we can also do Merobox version to see that the Merobox was installed correctly. So the next command is going to be Merobox help. This will show us all the available commands. We see the first one is bootstrap. This is used for running the nodes and testing out the workflows. What this does is it spins up the local networks, does the installation of the applications, creates context and tests the application logic that we define in the workflow. Next one is health. With this command we just check the status of our nodes. Next up is Merobox logs with the following name of the node that we want to check logs for. This will show us the node logs inside the terminal. Next one is Merobox Nuke. This is used to nuke all the Calimero data and the running containers in the Docker. Next up we have Merobox remote, and this is used for nodes that are deployed on some other servers or if the nodes are provisioned. So this is not used with the local nodes because everything we have is done locally. Next up we have command Merobox run. This also has flag which is count and we can select how many nodes do we want to run for our local network. We also have stop that stops Calimero nodes. You can select if you want to stop all the nodes or you can select name of the node you want to stop. Next we're going to do Merobox run --count 1. And we see that we have an error, and this error represents that we do not have a Docker running. So the next thing to do is to spin up Docker. I'm going to use Docker desktop, but you can use any version that you have. So after Docker is running, we can repeat the same command and we will actually get the node running. After we start our node, we see that it's pulling the image. It is Merod Edge version and it is showing us some data. For example, we can see that we have a URL which we join, and we're going to use this URL to access the admin dashboard. If you remember from other videos, there is an explanation what admin dashboard is and what can you use it for. So we're going to put our node URL and we see that we are logged in inside the admin dashboard. From there we can install applications and also create context and see some other things. Next up we have Merobox health. We see that we have the Calimero node 1 running, which is node that we run in the previous command. We can also do Merobox logs for the Calimero node 1, and here we would get any new log that comes through our services, web sockets or admin APIs. Then we're going to do Merobox stop Calimero node 1 and we are going to open up Docker to see that the node is not running anymore. Next up we have Merobox start, Merobox run, and the node is running again, as you can see in the Docker. And also in the Docker you can see all the logs for the node, so this is useful for debugging. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to go through the workflows that we have in Merobox. The workflows example cover all the possibilities that you can use workflows for testing your application logic or for testing the peer-to-peer networks. So first off, we have simple workflow example, and this example starts off with the name and description, which is optional. It also has force pull image, so it pulls the latest image every time it starts. For nodes we have chain ID, which can be also anything you want. We see that we have count 2, which means we will run 2 nodes with Merobox workflow. Then we also select things like image and prefix, base port and base port for the RPC. Next we define steps, and the first step is to install the application on the node. We have the Kiwi store in res folder under the same directory, and we have the outputs, which we are going to output the application ID because we need application ID to start a new context in the next step. As you can see, the next step is create context on node 1, that is the name of this step. We select the type is create context, select the node and the application ID. For outputs here we have context ID and member public key, and we need this because for the invitations to the context, we're going to need the context ID and also our member public key to create an invitation for another node. So we see the next step is create identity on node 2, and we need identity because we're going to do the invitation inside the context, and to be able to invite somebody we need their identity for the context. There's also something called open invitations, which do not require new invitee context ID. They just require our member ID from the inviter node and context ID to create an open invitation. Open invitation is free to claim and usable only once, so once somebody claims it from their node, it can be used anymore. And this is useful in applications for having better UX to make the invitation process simpler. Okay, we're going to go to the next step, which is the step 5. It is invite node 2 from node 1. We have the context ID, grantee ID and grantor ID, which is the public key of our node 1 and the public key of our node 2. The output of this step is the invitation, which will be used to join the context from node 2. After the node 2 joins the context, the nodes will sync and the state of the application will also be in sync because of the CRDTs. So the next thing to test out here is to write the JSON RPC calls, and we see that we have first call, which is set, and for this application we have Kiwi store, so we have key hello and the value world. We can also do output as result, and to test out that it is working properly you can also execute view call, which is just defined inside the logic of the application, and we can do this as you can see here on line 93. It is from node 2, we call get, and we would get the value for the set key from node 1. Here is also in the step 10 example on how to repeat multiple operations. So in this loop we are going to do call and set multiple times. In the end we have multiple things, so we have stop all nodes, restart and wait for timeout. For stop all nodes we have set false, and also for restart we have false. This is put like this, so when the workflow comes to an end it does not kill the nodes, so we can also preserve the logs of this workflow if we need some more details on what's actually going on with the application, with the network and with the sync. Okay, and the last thing that's left there is to test out these workflows. We're going to write Merobox, Bootstrap and the path to the workflow example. As you can see, the workflow is started. We're going to wait for it to finish. You will start seeing the steps we defined when the workflow starts. Okay, and we see that the first step is to run the nodes. Then we have waiting for nodes to be ready, and then we start with the workflow execution. So first thing we have, if you remember, is the install application. We see the output is application ID. Then next we do create context. The output is context ID and member public key. Then we create identity from node 2. Then we create the invitation and invite the node. Then we join the node, waiting for the sync, and then we can execute the JSON RPC calls, which are setters and getters for this key value store example. We see that we have key hello and value world. We also see the loop that we did. You can see here that we have the iteration 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, and 3 out of 3. And in the end, we see that we have captured dynamic values, and these are all the outputs we put out from the workflow. So we start with the application ID, then we have context ID, and so on. And this is it for this workflow. We see that workflow has completed successfully, meaning all the tests are passing. This is very useful for fast testing all your application logic for complex examples that you might be doing. Okay, and now we're going to open up other examples. You can see here that we have a lot of examples for the workflows. We're going to start with Assert example, which is basic Assert for the workflow. We have some values that we want to test if they are correct, and just for basic testing. This is how it's done. We have the arguments and we have the outputs that we want to test out. We have statements, for example, is set, is empty for context ID, for member public key, for set result, and we also have statements like Boolean testing and some other things like equal and not equal testing as well. Next up, we have the Auth example, which will turn on the Auth service, and Auth service is just another layer of protection in front of your node services, meaning the first time you start your node, the Auth service will be free to choose any username and password you want for your node, and every time you want to join, for example, admin dashboard or any application, you will go through the process of login because you want to protect your node and your data. So nobody can call your API or services without the proper authentication. You see here that we have the Auth service set as true, and let's run this example to show you how this will look like. Okay, Merobox bootstrap run workflow out. Wait for it to finish. We also have said that the restart is set to false, so we can run the node after the workflow is finished. And we see here that we have Auth URL, which we are going to use again to access admin dashboard. And you're going to see here that we have this additional layer, which is admin Auth. Not admin Auth, but the Auth service. So here, when we enter our node URL, we're going to be redirected to the Auth service. You can select near wallet or username and password. I'm going to select username and password. Just write something simple for start. Okay, we generate token and we're back inside. Next up, we have Auth image example. This is the same thing. We can just choose which Auth image we are going to use with our node. And this is useful if you want to have your own Auth service, which has, for example, simplified some of the things, or you would like for your node to be protected in a different way. This is all open source, so you don't have to use the default one. So the next one is blob upload example, and blobs are data types that are saved inside our nodes. So for example, we have images, text files or PDF files, and these are converted into blobs when stored inside the nodes, and they can be shared across the networks. So for example, how this can be used is we have the Calimero Curb chat application, which is chat application that has multiple channels, and there we also have upload image or upload file, so you can share your images or files as messages through the network. Here in folder you can also see that we have example files like readme.txt, sample.pdf and screenshot.png, which are used in this example to test out the blobs. We see all the steps required for this. We have the blob announcement, upload PNG to blob storage, register image in file contract, and this also uses the application for the blob testing, and the code for this can also be found in the repository. As you can see, we have multiple steps here, and some of them are fetching files, while some are the upload new files. We also see that we can delete blobs from our node, and the exact same thing can be done through the admin dashboard, where you can see all the blobs that are inside the node, and you can also manage them from the admin dashboard. Next one is context loop example. This example shows you how to repeat the process of creating context, and this can be useful if you have multiple contexts required for some kind of applications. Example of this can be curb chat, which is done in a way that we have a main context which is used as a context management, and then we have multiple subcontexts which are just instances of the main context. So how this all works is the main context has public channels where everybody is. We have multiple nodes inside the main context, but DMs are this subcontext created which only 2 people or 2 nodes are inside to keep everything private. So this is why you would need this loop for creating multiple contexts to test everything at once. Next one, we have workflow for the custom outputs. These are just examples of how you can differently name your outputs and use them in tests if you want to assert something or if you want to use them in the following steps. We have a lot of workflows here, and I encourage you to check them out if you're interested. There's really a lot of things covered here and everything you would need for testing your own applications. Next one, we have a workflow example binary. As you remember, when I mentioned the definition of Merobox, I also mentioned that Merobox is running networks inside the Docker. There's also a way to not use Docker, to use the binary, and this would be the same as using Merobox CLI tool. Covered this in previous videos, so please check them out to understand more. Following example, we have negative testing. For example, we see that we have expected failure, and we also have assert step where we can test negatives of the things we are testing. Following example is nested JSON RPC parsing, and this can be used when you have complex data types inside your application. For example, complex data type that I worked with was message type in curb application. It is complex because it has multiple fields that are returned in JSON, and to be properly tested we need to parse them. And as you can see here, we have all the examples how you can test and get anything from the JSON. As you can see, we have the result, output, level 1, level 2, level 3 and level 4. We also have Nuke example. This is just a short workflow which has following flags, which is Nuke node on start and Nuke node on end. This ensures we have fresh, clean nodes every time. Next, we have open invitation. If you remember from the previous workflows where I mentioned regular invitations that require inviter member key or identity, here you just need context ID and the inviter member public key. We see that we have here in this step all the things we need, and as mentioned, this invitation is free to claim by any node, and in this example we use the invitation from node 2 and test that out. Next one, we have the workflow for propagation monitoring. Because CRDTs are really complex, you can test out if the workflow is running correctly. You can set timeouts to see if the CRDT state is syncing correctly. In this example, we set key and value, then we wait for the propagation, for example 10 seconds, but it's really depending on the network speed. So next example is proposals example, and this example uses blockchain. This is when you want to integrate blockchain with your peer-to-peer application, meaning you can call blockchain smart contracts from your node. It can also be send transaction or read blockchain data. This depends on the complexity of applications and when we want to store, for example, immutable data on the blockchain. Next one is the repeat example. This example is repeating the whole workflow. So from the starting node, installing applications, creating context to testing logic, to doing this multiple times all over again. This is when we want to test if our application logic will be deterministic or if there are any bugs that might end up being non-deterministic. And just to mention in the end, when you want to test the workflows, first you would need to run the workflow script test YAML, because it downloads all the necessary things and install all the necessary tools you need for testing all the multiple workflow examples that we have. Because for example, for blockchain we need to build the application WASM. And this is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned something, and this will be useful for you when testing out your peer-to-peer applications. In following videos I will cover Calimero desktop application, which simplifies everything for you, the whole setup, and I will also cover the app registry on how to upload the applications to the app registry and how to then install them on the Calimero desktop application. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.